the panelists and all the participants who've just joined. A warm welcome from Venwiz for this webinar. We are doing this for the first time, yet it's going to be a very powerful one considering the panelists and the kind of audience which we have got across our 20 plus clients and few others who have joined through LinkedIn. And all of the audience is predominantly from the projects procurement and procurement combination from various manufacturing companies. Okay. And before I introduce both Gopal and Rahul, I'd like to say that in India today, we are doing close to 3 to 3.5 lakh crore worth of Capex every year across more than 15,000 plus manufacturing companies. Then we can also think about even just a mid-sized project would take more than 7 months to 8 months worth of time of multiple managers to do the procurement of the services across different size of procurement, different size of services for making these projects happening, right? And what we have felt when we started Venwiz and have been going through this journey is there are several companies and even a lot of external consulting organizations who have helped optimize on the OPEX part of companies, how well to do optimization on the maintenance side, operations side, time and motion studies, all of that have been done. But there have been lesser investments into how projects could have been done better, how we could have identified right vendor partners, right MSME vendor partners for different kinds of projects which we do at the site. And we felt we are addressing that problem in some shape and fashion, right? And there have been several learnings, and we have been sharing most of them with our clients and even in the public domain on LinkedIn and otherwise, right? And what I feel is we have a tremendous panel in terms of two unique individuals who come with their unique backgrounds to bring us knowledge from their learnings over the last few years, right? And we have Gopal Sarma from Bain, who's a senior partner at Bain and who has had great experience of running projects in his previous role as CEO at Feedback Ventures. And welcome to the afternoon event, sir. And
thank you very much, Rajesh. Pleasure to be here.
Right. And we also have Rahul Poddar, who has been our key evangelist from Nestle. And we've been working with Nestle over more than year and a half now. And his views align with ours with respect to how technology can aid these kind of job execution at a plant level and at a different projects level. And we feel we are very happy to have him as a panelist to talk about both like before using tools and after using tools kind of an exposure also. Thanks, Rahul, for joining this.
Thanks, Rajesh. Thanks for the opportunity and a very good afternoon to all the viewers from my side. Thank you.
Right. So without any further delays, I think I'll just start the discussion. Before we just jump into the questions I have for the panel, I would like to hear briefly from you both, Gopal and Rahul. Gopal, could you share a little bit about your role currently and at the same time, what kind of engagements you do at Bain so that people understand the context better?
Great. Thank you, Rajesh. And once again, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm a senior, my name is Gopal Sarma. I'm a senior partner at Bain. I've been with Bain now for almost 15 years. And I lead our work across emerging markets in the areas of construction, real estate, and infrastructure. And over the last 4 or 5 years, especially, I've also been doing work in the oil and gas sector. So I think everything that I do has some linkage to projects. If we talk real estate, the faster you build to the right quality and spec, the better your brand franchise with the customer. Construction projects, I think Rajesh already talked of the volume of projects that are going on in the country. The other fact is 90% of them are delayed. And probably 90% of those are off budget. And this is not just construction projects. This is, I think, something that I've seen across all projects. So a lot of the work that I do, well, there is a significant component that's focused on growth, a lot that's focused on operating costs and efficiencies. there's a very large component of projects and capital projects. And as part of that, we've been doing a lot of work on how do we actually make this more efficient? What are some of the challenges in the entire project life cycle, and how across different segments of projects, how do we actually address these? So that's really that's the only reason why I'm in this conversation. So, and I'm hoping that this experience is of some benefit and value to all of you. Rahul?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, Gopal, and really a pleasure and honor to be in company of such a senior person. Well, comparative to that, of course, I am Rahul Poddar. I am head of procurement for Nestle India, and for me, Capex and projects buying is a part of my job and not like a full-time dedication. But uh, it's a very opportune time at which I am handling this portfolio for this such a great global organization. And it's when Nestle is massively expanding its infrastructure, both via greenfields and brownfields, and putting a massive investments behind its iconic brands like Maggi, Nescafe, KitKat, Munch, and infant nutrition. And by the virtue of that, our global CEO, Mr. Mark Schneider, was in India last year, and in his meeting with Mr. Modi, he announced that Nestle would be investing around 5,000 crores into infrastructure in India within next 2 to 3 years. So during the course of the discussion, I'll be bringing up certain examples and case studies from these massive mega factories, which are world's largest factories, not only for Nestle, but also otherwise the largest factories, and how as procurement, as a head of procurement, I am part of it, and certain case studies or certain examples which we can share from that side.
Sure. Thank you. Welcome to both of you once again. Okay. So we'll jump into the questions right away. And Rahul, when you said Maggi for a second, I script by thinking Maggi is a brand or a item. Then you said it's a brand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a brand.
Sure. So Rahul, we could start with you. Where could you please share the kind of projects you have seen over the last 5 years or 6 years at Nestle, right? What kind of projects? Expansion, greenfield, a mix, and what
Sure.
production?
So last 5 years, like for any other FMCG companies, India has gone through a massive growth and is still going through. A lot of regularization of economy has happened. So a lot of economy has moved from gray to organized sector. And because of the commodity volatilities, a lot of regional players got shunted out, and also the growing consciousness of food quality, compliance, and safety norms have come on the consumer. So it was a very great period for us, and hence in last 5 years we have undertaken massive investments. So some of the projects, I will start with the biggest one is our ninth factory, which came up in Gujarat in the industrial district of Sanand. This factory is going to be dedicated to two major products, which is foods producing Maggi and chocolates, in which we would be doing our iconic brand Munch out there. Just to give you a scale, this project would be producing almost 160,000 tons of Maggi per annum, and and almost 20,000 tons of Munch wafer chocolate would be coming out of it. So this is one of our big mega investment which we have done, running in somewhere around 1200 CR. Besides this, we have also done a lot of brownfields in which we have come up with a completely new line from roasters to extractors and the dryers for our Nescafe brand. Again, this is a brand which has doubled itself in last 6 years. So from somewhere like a sale of 7,000 tons 6-7 years ago, it's a brand which has grown to 14 to 15,000 tons of dry coffee in India. So complete new line there. And then again, another business where we experienced is chocolates. So our iconic factory in Ponda, which makes KitKat, which is the only KitKat factory in India, in Southeast Asia region, it doubled its size by investing into more and more ovens and molding lines. So these were some mega scale projects. And of course, other than this, a lot of transformation in form of converting from conventional fuels to biomass fuel boilers in utilities, going from conventionally in-house managed facility management to outsourced facility management, outsourced warehouse managements of the factories, automation of the warehouses, from manual warehouses to ASRS warehouses. So all these things, of course, I mean, these are also a lot of small items which we keep us busy.
Okay, awesome. So this question is to you, Gopal. So I want to understand through your current role at Bain, are you looking closely, what kind of projects are you looking closely at, right? And at the same time, my follow-up question is, among the projects, are there projects you are looking at manufacturing companies and for EPC companies separately? And if there are, what could be the nuances?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And again, in full disclosure, I can't reveal any specific names.
Yeah.
But what I can do is give you some indicators of the kind of activity that we do on both sides of the table. So I'm going to start with a pretty interesting real estate project that we were involved in that actually has just been finished, where the challenges that the developer faced were, in my mind, very similar to what any standard factory, anyone who's putting up a standard manufacturing facility would face. I think one big issue is time is money. Once you've made the decision to put capital on the ground, you want to start seeing the outcome of that capital as soon as possible. So in an ideal world, I decide today I want all the capital deployed tomorrow, and I want to see it start being productive from the day after, right? So this was actually a project which involved a fairly complex commercial office building. And when I say complex, for a variety of reasons, the subsurface, the soil, the facade, the finishes, it was a LEED 1 building, platinum rated. So the kind of utility management, the kind of environmental services that had to be provided. So it pretty much had everything in it. And the challenge was there was a lot of demand, and 90% of the business was sold, 90% of the building was sold even before it started. So that whole concept of time of money became even more accelerated. And we actually delivered that building about 40% ahead of what a normal building would take.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay. And the one thing I will say is none of it was rocket science. Much as I'd like to claim that it was, none of it was rocket science. And the big lesson to me is typically when anyone does a large project, they view it from a very incremental perspective, saying, okay, last time I spent 46 crores on 5 dryer lines. This time, maybe with inflation, I need to spend at 7% more per annum 3 years later, that goes to 60 crores or whatever the math is.
Yes.
Okay. I'm building 40,000 square meters of commercial space. Last 2 years back, it costed me, X thousand rupees per square meter. It's going to now cost me. All we did was go back and question saying, are we doing the right thing?
Okay.
So one of the things that we actually changed was we moved from a concrete building to a steel building, which came with its own complications and challenges because steel has certain fire issues and other issues. The number of people who can actually work on steel in India is very limited.
Okay.
But once we made the call that we will move to steel, we were actually able to address all of these. Okay. It forced a lot of, and what that in turn did was force a lot of very, very different thinking on how to provide the utilities, how to provide MEP. So the simple message is, while we can look at real estate projects and infrastructure projects and manufacturing projects and assume that each is its own unique animal, at the end of the day, the philosophy behind doing each of these is pretty much the same.
Yep.
Okay. Number one, time is money.
Yeah.
Second, a project is not complete when the activities are all complete. It is complete when the risks are at zero.
Okay.
When we look at a project, and I would strongly advise the entire projects group that is listening to this, tag the risk to every critical path item. If you manage the risk, your critical path will get managed. Now, it sounds very obvious, right? It sounds very, very obvious. But if you go and look at 9 out of 10 project control rooms, you will find delays because risk events have happened, right? And we've looked at maybe 500 projects as part of our broader work. We've looked at 500 manufacturing and construction projects in this country. Okay. And the data is 90% of them are delayed and 90% of them are over budget. The common thread across all of these is nobody had actually done the detailed analysis of what are the risks that can hamper the project. And how do I do my procurement and packaging strategy to help manage that risk? Because very often, and now, I'm speaking from the other side of the fence, and, pardon me. Very often as procurers of project, we try and pass on all the risk to the provider of service. Okay. Because intuitively, that makes a lot of sense, saying, let me pass the risk on. The issue is in 5 out of 10 or in 7 out of 10 cases, you are better equipped to handle the risk than they are because you know this a lot better.
So when you say risks, Gopal, is there any small flavor you could give? What kind of
Any kind of risk? For example, in a manufacturing project, I think the biggest risk, apart from approvals and stuff, which is fairly normal, is the integration risk.
Okay.
Right? If I'm packaging something into 5 different packages, ultimately they all need to come together and work.
Correct.
By physical definition, a project would be complete when the 5 packages are complete.
Yes.
But the actual definition is the project is complete when the risk of that not working together is 0.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I would try and pass off that risk to the biggest package owner, saying, okay, you are the biggest package, now you take. Okay. Because they don't know better, they'll take on the risk. Okay. And maybe they're getting a 3% or a 4% premium or whatever it is. But at the termination point, when you're supposed to be finishing, is when you're actually starting to see all the problems.
Yeah.
Right. So I would very simply, in my mind, I wouldn't make too much of a distinction between different types of projects because at the core is the same. Go back to do a clean sheet. Okay. There's been so much advancement in technology. There's been so much advancement in construction. Should I be building it the same way I built it 5 years back? Should I be packaging out in the same way that I packaged it 5 years back? Okay. And Patton had a very famous quote. You plan it. The more you plan, you can never spend too much time on planning.
Yeah.
Okay. And the more you plan, the less time you take to execute. Sorry, I can go on and on with this for days because I live this all the time, but I'm going to pause there.
Yeah, I'll pause you. So the only question I would ask you is, when you said projects, right? One of them you said is a commercial building. Are there examples, 1-2 other examples, so that we get the space where you're coming from when you made these comments?
So I'll give you an example of an actual manufacturing facility that we do a lot of. We do what we call managed value engineering.
Okay.
And value engineering is in 2 parts. There's how do you do the project faster, and how do you actually look at better costing for components.
Sure.
Right. And how do you actually, let's say your budget is 1,000 crores, how do you deliver it for 900? Because I can promise you shine a light on project cost, you'll find money. Right. By doing all the things that we just talked of. So, I can give you lots of examples. I can give you an example of a small power plant, a solar power project, where, again, at the end of the day, it is a manufacturing unit. You're bringing 5 modules together.
And
you got land. Okay. Very large automobiles unit, where I think the key there was actually, can we make the critical path was getting the lines up and running. And after much debate, we actually went for a single vendor for the entire line.
Okay.
So we literally packaged the project into 2. There was the civil and there was the equipment.
Others, yeah. Okay.
And instead of breaking the equipment down, we said, okay, give it to one person who is capable of taking all the risk.
Sure.
And we actually got to a 3-month ahead of schedule delivery.
Okay. Okay. So I was only checking the kind of projects, and I think it's very related to the audience who's looking at hearing this one. Okay. So audience, please keep posting questions on the chat box whenever you have any. And currently we have a small poll for you. So please look at the poll, which my team Harman and Mehul will be sending it to you. Please respond to that, right? And we'll just start in another 30 seconds. Okay, I think we already have some percentage of the answers. We'll go through the questions for Rahul and Gopal now. So Rahul, so you shared some of the projects, right? Let's say the Maggie production line or the Munch production line or new coffee line and so on, right? What do you think are top 3 or 4 key success indicators when you take up these projects? You guys use at Nestle to assess them.
See, of course, on time in full is the simplest definition of success for anything, huh? Whether you're looking at direct supplies or you're looking at a project completion. So at a very simplistic level, that's the picture of success. But when you get into context of any field you are into, this would mean different things for different kinds of spends, right? Of course, I mean, for a project, as Gopal very elaborately explained, like for a building, a manufacturing facility, the first noodle cake will be made on the line when the boiler, when the main line, when the raw material receiving silos, when the main dough making line, frying line, and the packing line together works, and the warehouse works. That's when you are able to first send the first carton of the product outside the factory, and the billing starts, right? The invoicing starts, and that's where how fast are you able to uh, get the production out of it? Because again, drawing back to his example, uh, once you have decided to invest, then how fast your invoicing can start. Till that time, the time is money, right?
Yep.
So for us, of course, uh, completion of the projects in all its parameters is a very important success factor, right? However, at what cost? So because all the costs which you're putting in needs to be then has to be funded from the P&L, and so any budget overruns are will cause a extra strain. So whether we have been able to do it within the estimated cost budget. Third would be third would be the quality which we have been able to get. You may have something on time, but is it as per the same spec? And the spec in case of a food product company would vary from the accuracy of the product being manufactured in terms of quality, compliance, quality, compliance, and the safety of the entire environment in which it is being made for the people who are making it, as well as what is going outside the factory, right? So the quality with which it has been delivered, and fourthly would be the you know the paraphernalia around the core of the main factory. Your processing line is the core, but the paraphernalia around it, has that come together in a coherent manner on the desired date? So are your different utilities, your air handling units, your this, that, everything, and the civil around it, is it completely integrated and working fine and delivering things? So this to me would be I mean, you can apply this to anywhere, but let's say a little bit, I try to flesh it out a little more in detail in terms of a factory kind of an environment.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rahul, for that. Now, so Gopal, you've already shared that as per your surveys at Bain, that more than 90% of the companies projects have not fared well with respect to cost, right? Is there more nuance on in which areas do they fail, right? And also a flavor on who could be the like broader stakeholders who should be looking at it? You're on mute, Gopal.
No, I was trying to get my thoughts together as you were asking the question. So ultimately, I think at one level, the stakeholders are fairly obvious. There is a projects team that is a key stakeholder. There is the team that is waiting for the product in from any manufacturing business. There's always a team that's waiting for product, because the one thing that typically starts well in advance of production actually starting is the market development.
Correct.
To actually get the market ready for whether it's a new product or you're just expanding capacity. You can't just assume that once you make it, there are very, very few products that have that kind of demand that you just make it and it flies off the shelves. So that there clearly is a market stakeholder. There is the manufacturing, finance. The one stakeholder that should actually have a far greater voice than it does currently on the completion elements, not on the planning elements. I mean, obviously, finance has a huge voice on budgeting, on providing the budgets, on clearing, on providing approvals. But at the end of the day, they're the custodian. Any delay, any change in plan ultimately impacts the P&L. So one of the biggest stakeholders in these delays should actually be the finance team. Now, at one level, you could argue that the whole company is a stakeholder, and yes, but I'm just trying to bring it down, narrow down the focus a little more. Okay. So there is a very direct stakeholder, which is the projects team, and then there are multiple other stakeholders embedded in the organization, right? One of the reasons that these projects also get delayed is most project organizations are solving in a very linear fashion. Okay, this is the plan. Let me monitor each vendor. Okay. The projects organizations that have actually been most spectacularly successful are the ones that go way beyond a monitoring role to a partnering role.
Okay.
Right. Now, it's interesting. There's a global company.
Yes.
Okay. They've done some amazing things in terms of growth, in terms of stakeholder value. And one of the things that they've done is every time they've built a new manufacturing facility, they've challenged themselves to deliver it faster than the previous time.
Okay.
Wherever it is in the world. I mean, I may build a beer unit in Poland. Mm-hmm. If the next one I'm doing is in Mexico, it still needs to be faster.
Okay.
Right? Now, obviously, in the first few years, the graph was steep. They were getting much better results. Now the graph is plateauing, but it's still doing better. Every project is still better than the previous one. And the reason that they've been able to do it is they've realized that being combative with your delivery partners actually doesn't give you good outcomes. What gives you the best outcomes is literally working hand in glove. Now, let's say, Rahul, in your coffee business, you need a spray dryer that is going to be ready on the 1st of March, 2026. Okay. What it does is it has an implant in the manufacturing unit that is making this, that knows what should start when, in order for that to be installed on the 1st of March. And if on the 1st of February 2024, the predecessor activities are not complete, they will know, and they'll also know what can be done with that partner in order to make up for the deadline. We typically, in most project delivery, and this is especially so in India, we look at the outcome and then at remedial action. Global best practice is you actually look at the outcome before it's happening, And are the activities that lead to the outcome in place? And while this may sound theoretical, I can promise you in practice it works brilliantly.
Of course.
Okay. And the more complex your engineering, now if I'm doing a very simple, if I'm doing an aircraft hangar, then yes, inside that there could be some bought out items that are complex. But in most manufacturing projects, what you'll find is the components are not off the shelf, they're engineered. You know, the way you build a spray dryer for X 1,000 tons of capacity for a particular level of moisture in the end product, that is not more than X and not less than Y. Okay. It's not a standard widget. It is a customized widget. Right. Therefore, who better than me as the user to know what really should go into it? And therefore, who better than me to actually partner with my supplier to make sure I get what I need on time? And most importantly, to the spec that I wanted. Okay. So the 10% of projects that are actually going well are those where the project sponsor is working as a partner with their suppliers and not as a monitor or not as a checker.
And sorry to interrupt here. When you said 90% are going off the charts, how big are the budgets? Like, is it 10%, 20%, or it's?
Oh, it could be anything that's less than 20% of budget, we count it on time. Let's be clear.
Okay.
You know, anything that's 20% off time or 10% off cost, that's fine. I mean, that's contingency.
Okay. So these
So
are
you're
all
anyway starting with a very healthy, you know, you're starting with a very healthy buffer. So it could be 20% to 300%.
Crazy. Okay. 300% is never imagined.
Yeah, but it depends on the nature of the project. Again, in most manufacturing projects, I would say it's anywhere between 20 and 70%.
Okay.
The combined impact of time and cost.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think these are good points, Gopal. I take definitely the projects team is the key stakeholder, and other teams in the company should also play the support role. But the biggest nuance you are sharing is they should become more participants with the external partners than become very combative. Like monitoring, chhod ke, you have to do more participative with them and work along with them. Okay.
There are two questions, if I may. I want to pick up the second one, because this is something we struggle with all the time. How does a project manager bring in the right balance between quality and cost? Okay. Now, my honest answer is I don't think you should look at that as a trade-off. Okay. Especially going forward, I would strongly, the moment you start saying I'm looking at a trade-off and literally I'm willing to go to X% of quality for Y% of cost. Okay. That then becomes a moving line.
Yeah.
What we found to be very, very helpful is lay down your non-negotiable on one or the other.
Okay.
I mean, all of us would like the best quality in the world at zero cost. That's not going to happen. Right? So depending on what, I mean, obviously, if you're in the pharmaceutical business, you cannot compromise on quality. We've seen what happens to people who do. You're in the foods business. I'm pretty certain Nestle is never going to compromise on quality.
Of course.
But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you're going to spend 3x what you would want to otherwise spend. But all I'm saying is, instead of viewing it as a balance between quality and cost, define which one is your non-negotiable. Okay. So if quality is my non-negotiable, then that I will define. And then I will ask for what is the cost to get that quality. And then I'll be ruthless on the cost.
Sure. Okay.
But I will not be ruthless to the cost of quality.
Sure. I'll go to the next set of questions, right? These are on the project management side, and I think in the interest of time, I'll go a little faster. Okay. Rahul, you have shared about the list of projects you have seen and exposure towards doing procurement for these projects. Okay. What I would ask is, what have been the kind of problems you have seen? And out of them, what have been the learnings for your team, for your Capex procurement team or the projects team?
Thanks, Rajesh. And I mean, problems are basically the mirror image of the picture of success. You want to have a project on time, not having delays is a problem for you, right? You want a certain quality and it's not coming is a problem for you, right?
Correct.
So I mean, at a very basic level, a problem is something which is not happening as per your want. And so typically, what I have seen from a procurement point of view is that, because early involvement of procurement for any organization in a project is very, very important, very, very critical. Any organization which looks at procurement, that now we have uh, uh, we want this, and this is the person we want it from. Okay, the company's audit rules don't allow me to go and buy, so come procurement, you please go ahead and negotiate. By that time there is nothing left to be negotiated, because the other party already knows that the engineer is going to get this stuff from me only, and in fact the vendor would have made the specification given to engineer rather than the other way around, and so you're stuck with that person, and there's no value creation, which is the scope of value creation is left. So I think that's where the partnering between the project team and the procurement team, early stages at the time of conceptualization itself, is very, very important. Second, I would feel, is the scope, like Gopal elaborated on quality. So quality is, in a project management, has to be defined in the scope. The accuracy of that scope and the comprehensiveness of that scope will define a realistic budget. And then once you have fixed this pole to whatever person, I mean, I have never seen a scope which will not move a little bit here or there, but if the variation is in a range of plus minus 5%, good. But if the scope is swinging like a pendulum from 20 to 30% in both the directions, then nobody knows where the goalpost is. So you don't know where to shoot, right? So so accuracy and comprehensiveness of the scope is very important, right? Of course, as procurement, you can't generally, at least in case of engineering, I won't say that we would play a very key role, but even if procurement is there as an observer, as somebody who's consulted and at least kept informed, it plays a lot of role. There can be certain market realities which can be integrated at that point of time. I mean, as a suggestion, not wanting to change anything, do the technical stuff. And once you have done this, I think the most important thing is your vendor selection, because that is where, I mean, people are an organization which wants the project has a wish list, but it has to be done by the vendors. The project is, at the end of the day, executed by the vendors, chosen by the organization, and paid by the organization. So those guys, how do you get them? How are you qualifying them? How are you conveying your requirement to them in a more in the most understandable manner? How much time do you spend there? And not in terms of hours of time, in terms of quality of communication at that stage. And then if you have the right vendor selection in terms of people who have the right capabilities, like Gopal was mentioning that the iconic project, which probably I think is in our neighborhood only, when it moved from RCC to steel, then you get into things that there are only these many people who can do this kind of steel, whereas when you are in RCC, there are hundreds of other companies which you can go to, right? So once your vendor should have the required capability, should have the required, let's say, the resources and the financial stability. And of course, I mean, competence in terms of having the right tools and all that is of course there. So, capability, the required amount of resources, and the financial stability to be part of your journey and to be able to see you end to end. Often, if you run behind cost, you may end up compromising on one of these things at a vendor's end.
Correct.
And a project is a kind of a thing. Once you have onboarded somebody, then you cannot do bye-bye in between. And if you have to actually do it, it will be one of the most disastrous thing to do. So it's kind of a, if you consider project as a lifetime, then choosing your vendors is like choosing your life partners for the lifetime of that project. So the amount of, the caution and screening has to be commensurate to that level of criticality. Then I think once you have your vendors in place, I think the most important is, and where the projects fail and where, of course, you can make a success story out of it, is having a clear, defined, milestone-based approach, right? To the whatever best of level of understanding we have and our capability is to foresee the future, right? And
Correct.
there I really like the idea and an example shared by Gopal about even going to the extent of partnering, to going and being physically present in the manufacturing units of your partners, right? Of course, in Nestle, we have an elaborate product technology center, kind of a infrastructure, let's say an organization within organization, because our final products are similar. A Kit Kat would look the same in UK, in US, and in India or Australia, and hence the Kit Kat making line will also be standardized across Nestle. And so we would already have pre-qualified vendors, and every market doesn't struggle with finding them. But probably, I think I was really inspired by the story that currently in Nestle, we still do project management as a weekly or a bi-weekly meeting module, where of course we have a Gantt chart, we keep a track on what they were supposed to do and what they are declaring they are doing. But probably it's the next level would be that you go and even verify whether they are doing it or not, right? We do visit our vendors at some milestones, but probably a better engagement there would be better. And till here, everything is quite intuitive, but things will never go. Murphy's Law will always strike. So from a procurement point of view, I still feel that a BCP should always be there. Should always be there. Now you can't have a BCP for everything. So there's no point doing a theoretical exercise just for sake of filling a form called BCP form. But I mean, this is where a collaborative and partnership-based approach between engineering and procurement, and where you do a Pareto on your risk, and you select that, okay, these are things or areas where we may see some trouble, so we should have some BCP in place. Now, if these things are done in advance at the time of conception itself, then when the VUCA hits you, you're not running around at that time, because at that time you would be in immense pressure. But probably if you have done this preparation, you will have some playbook to play by at that point of time, right? And with complete humility, you will never ever be able to accurately know or define what kind of event will happen and when it will happen. But still having some kind of initial thought exchange and something is always helpful as a starting point, right? And then of course, I mean, I would suggest, I mean, every project will either get delayed or a preponed. I think one reality is that only very few projects happen exactly at the time when we wanted. Either they are delayed, or generally they are preponed, or your stakeholders may want them to be preponed. Like it often happens with us that we have planned certain factory to come with this market reality, the growth is even higher than that, and then we suddenly know we need that line 6 months ago. So okay, run around and try and prepone everything by 6 more months. So why I'm bringing this point is that if you can already seed in your negotiation and legal agreements some kind of clauses and references or benchmarks or ways of working, that if delays were to happen or we would require preponements, then what all cost elements will open, right? Or where will be the scope of doing that? And how will we negotiate at that point of time? If you don't define this, and once you are married to that person, then it will be completely their game. At the time when the business is not awarded, people are always open to discuss things more and to get things because they want the business, right? Once business is awarded, then they know, okay, boss, abhi to I'm sitting on an advance. Where will Nestle run away, or AV and Bev will run away, and they will dictate the terms. So I think having some kind of framework on how you would do that, on things like labor cost, if delays are happening, then how would you account for inflation in the manpower cost, or if you are wanting preponements and you want extra resources, because preponement can only happen if you bring more man and machine for fabrication or building up the factory or whatever, then at what cost would you kind of, or how would you evaluate the labor market at that point of time and all that thing.
Sure,
This
sure.
this is also important from a point of view of having a compliance kind of framework also, because if you define these things earlier, then those negotiations become easily explainable to the stakeholders to seek approvals, as well as later on also in point of view of audit trails, because these are generally mega investments and there's a lot of answerability and accountability of both project team and procurement team around these aspects, right? And of course, last is every project will have certain core areas where your degrees of freedom with respect to vendors would be lesser,
Yes.
and certain common areas where your degrees of freedom would be more, right? So as project team, we must understand that and we must leverage it, right? We should shoot for a competitive price discovery where it makes sense, and where giving the right amount of money, or rather instead of a bidding approach, having a strategic negotiation based approach and doing value creation. So if one rule will not fit all kinds of project parameters, and so accordingly deciding your strategy and timing it right would be the another area which I feel. So now probably I don't know, I mean I've touched upon the areas where we have seen problems and where we have kind of trying to learn out and see that how we can do this better next time.
Sure, sure. I think we've just taken a little more time here.
Sure.
But I think very nice point, Rahul. I got the framework with respect to vendors, and degrees of freedom framework is also good. So these aspects are quite good. Mehul, you can initiate the next poll while I continue with question to Gopal. Yeah.
Rajesh, as I said, my apologies. I'm going to have to jump in 2 or 3 minutes. But there's one question here. I think in general, we put a lot of the onus for delays on external parties. Right? Typically, okay, why is this delayed? Okay, that contractor failed, or this equipment supplier didn't provide on time. But deep down, again, our research shows that about half the delays also come from scope change. And there's a question here on how do you ensure that the scope of the project stays stable? And I think it's a great question. Whoever asked that nailed half the problem of delays. And again, the one route that we have found that has been most useful in managing this is you're never going to get away by saying you can't change the scope, right? Because life is not stationary. But I think the mistake that 90% of project owners make, and when I say owner, it's the person on whom the responsibility for delivery on time and in cost or to quality is given. 90% of the people do not bring to life what is the impact of a scope change, right? Now, let's say your marketing head comes back, your sales head comes back and says, I want another 30% capacity. Okay. You typically want to be nice and say, yes, I'll find a way to do it. But the answer actually may be that, listen, let's just stay with things the way they are. Because if you want a 30% increase in capacity, you're going to expand the time by 12 months because we'll have to redo, not enhance, but we'll have to redo a lot of things. And we'll have to redo the entire cycle of equipment ordering. So the impact on time and cost is going to be a lot more than 30%. Maybe the right answer is go with what you have and 1 year later set up another facility. Okay. But if we can keep the scope to 90-95% of what the original scope plan was, then a lot of your delays will get reduced.
Yeah, the 50%.
And the only way to do that, the only way is when somebody asks for a scope change, whoever it is. It could be the owner, it could be the MD, it could be the marketing sales head, it could be finance. You need to bring to life the impact of the scope change and then get a management sign off saying, okay, I'm willing to take the 40% time increase and the 30% cost increase. Then it's no longer a delay.
Correct.
It becomes a delay when I say that, yes, I can fix this. I'll give you what you want. And then I come back 6 months later and say it's actually going to take a lot longer. Right? So transparency and visibility is a very, very big issue. I know there are a couple of other topics, Rajesh, you wanted me to address, but apologies, I do have to jump.
Sure,
Very
sure.
happy to continue this dialogue one-on-one with you, with the participants, but thank you very much.
Sure.
And it's been a pleasure being a part of this. Thank you all.
Thanks, Gopal. And
Thanks,
I know
Gopal.
I should have done better with the questions spacing, but yeah, thank you so much.
No, but this was, I think each question deserved the time it took. So I'm hoping the audience enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we will continue with Rahul for 2-3 more minutes. So Rahul, please stay
Sure,
on.
no worries. No.
Yeah. So Rahul, so Mehul, you can give the poll questions to the audience. I'll go to the next question for Rahul. So this is where I think you can already see the question, right? This is a section we want to go to. So from your experience of going through all of these projects, using multiple frameworks, the way you shared, etc., are there certain digital tools which are coming into play and helping you do the project's execution better, right? And or first thing is, do you see a digital tool playing a good role, right? So could you please give your views on that? Yeah.
Sure. I'll bring a very a basic reality in light of everybody. Because Capex projects don't happen for a end consumption companies for us on a regular basis, right? Generally, organizations have not invested in creating digital tools to or adopting tools or working with digital tools for this spend. Whereas we should understand that when you come with a Capex project, you spend almost 2 to 3 years of, let's say, budget of your direct expenditure in 1 year. And the impact is huge. It sits on your P&L forever. So I really feel that, this is a space where the criticality of digital tool is utmost because spend is humongous. The scope is complicated and multiple stakeholders and multiple parties are involved. While organizations still try to monitor it and control it by using Excel or very basic tools, right? And why they don't invest in tools is because they do it probably once in 10 years, once in 15 years, right? Well, not every organization puts a factory after every 2 years, right? So this is the stark reality that while if you sum total the infrastructure spend, it's so huge, but it's still getting governed by a simple thing like Excel in most of the organization. That's where I feel a criticality of these tools is there. That's where I also feel because any organization cannot afford to make this tool because of the less frequency of the spend at this thing. A role of partners who can bring this competence and these tools to the organizations when they need it also becomes critical, right? This also becomes very, very critical. Thirdly, you must also understand, like if I'm an organization which goes into a mega factories and I put a mega factory once in 10 years, like our last factory was in 2012, and then we put a factory, the next factory came only into existence in 2022 for a company like Nestle, 10 years, the next factory. You won't be able to, even if you hire good talent to manage projects back in 10 who delivered a project in 2012, if you don't have work, you will never be able to retain that good talent for 10 years waiting for the next, the big ticket item to happen, right? So the human competence to deliver and handle these may not always be present internally. So not only tool, even let's say the intelligence around it is not something continuous. See, we buy, like I'll take an example, like I buy wheat flour every year to keep feeding my factories wheat flour, cocoa powder, cocoa butter, these things to make my products on a day. So I have best of the talent who does that, and because they regularly do it, they are even becoming more sharper, and they grow and we are able to retain. But in Capex, often this doesn't happen.
Correct.
That's where on human and technology competence, I feel, and I'm already seeing the results that getting into tools and an organization which not only simply hands you over a software, but provides you, the intelligence around it, does a good amount of pre-work around it already ready-made for you, is very important to save time, to prevent the learning cost, right? To prevent and avoid that learning cost and to deliver these projects, to choose the right partners in the first place and to deliver. Hence you get into your picture of success, as we elaborately defined earlier in this conference. So that is where I feel that this is very important. And if there are such of course, Venwiz is one such partner, and there are in this space, the scope of the learning log getting implemented and these tools and these ecosystem getting improved is very important, sir.
Sure. I think we are just short on time. We'll take Mehul, any last questions you have from the audience?
Yeah, I feel while others are anonymous, Mr. Raj Preetham, you here? You had asked a question. Harman, can you enable mic for Mr. Raj Preetham, please?
Sure.
EC and CTO, I don't know the full form.
Yeah, I think it's better he asks this question.
Would you know
himself.
that, Rahul?
What? Sorry, I missed that.
There are two terms in terms of getting EC and CTO. Where does India stand with respect to other developing countries?
Sorry, I won't be able
Raj
to
Preetham,
understand.
you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask, AC is in environmental clearance and CTO is in consent to operate.
Okay.
So since I kind of represent a steel industry, so I just wanted to understand that these are all very crucial approvals from the GOI, Government of India, to anyway start a project or to get a land, the clearances from the Forest Department and all those stuff. So I just wanted to have a view with respect to the question. So with respect to other developing countries, where do we stand as in getting the clearance and all those stuff?
Okay, I mean, it's a bit of technical question for me. I'm sorry, I'm from procurement background, but maybe from what we have experienced in terms of environmental clearance or consent to operate, of course, I mean, it's something where we have to deal with the state authorities. And there is, because these are state matter subjects, at least what I have seen in few of the projects, the rules change from state to state. The efficiency and the competence of the regulatory authorities also varies from state to state, right? Unfortunately, despite as a country and as a central governments, all the push to make India a more attractive investment destination, but this this variation and the difficulties and the red tapeism which we all organized players have to face is little difficult to manage. And I don't think there's a pre-structured solution. You need to find the right partners for you in that state to help you maneuver through the the government offices.
Okay.
Of course,
Thank you.
I believe that from our organizational point of view, we would have done everything honestly, which is required to be done in terms of getting the right infrastructure and everything in place. But despite that, also you have to struggle to get clearances.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. I think we are coming to the end. Mehul, is there anything else for the audience or otherwise?
No, there are other questions which we've noted, and we will we will recapitulate the entire session over a short email, so it will be addressed.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rahul, and also Gopal for sharing your insights over this 1 hour. We would like to keep doing this a lot more. And whenever we do live events also, we would like you to participate. And thank you, audience, for being there for the whole 1 hour and asking right questions and so on. Yeah.
Thanks, Venwiz team. It has always been a pleasure working with you. And honestly, in our last 2 years of association, we have seen tremendous value coming out of it. And I'm very excited with the future possibilities which we have in exploring this digital tool and this space which you have for our next mega project, which would be coming in the East India. So best of luck to all of you, and my regards to all the audiences for patient hearing. I hope it was value adding to you all in some form. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.